Folks, would it affect your decision to buy a home knowing it was the scene of a violent crime or a homicide? I'll get into that and then the latest home prices and insights for the City of Toronto for week ending March 20th, 2024. Many of you have subscribed recently. Thank you for that. But many of you come here every single week. You enjoy the content and you've not yet subscribed. Consider subscribing. So there's a client where, well, she wasn't actually a client, but this lady I was speaking with a few times over the span of about a year, year and a half. She was thinking of selling, then not, thinking of selling, then not. And the last time I spoke with her, she has said, no, we're going to wait a little bit before we sell because I've got tenants in the basement. She had recently rented out her basement. She's got a couple living in the basement and she wasn't going to do anything until they were gone. So, okay, that's how we left it. Come to find out in the news, not too much later than that basement, those tenants, it was the scene of a violent crime where a homicide was committed. So the question is, do you want to know this if you were a potential buyer of that house or any other house? Do you want to know is the question. Let me know in the comments below. I can tell you, working with buyer clients, most of my buyer clients are shocked to know that the selling side does not need to disclose that. Our rules are pretty clear. If you're working as an agent for the seller and the home is the scene of any violent crime, homicide, death, it does not need to be disclosed. I know it's shocking to a lot of you, but those are our rules. And what we do need to disclose if something about the home makes it uninhabitable or dangerous or things like that. Yeah, we need to disclose those type of defects. But somebody passing away in the home is not a defect of the home. A violent crime being committed in the home is not a defect of the home. So we don't need to disclose that if we're representing the seller side. But if you're on the buyer side and you're a realtor represented the buyer side, would this affect your buyer's decision to buy that home? Depending on which side you're on, there's a different answer to that question. As a seller, you probably don't want to disclose that, and you do not have an obligation to disclose. And if you're wondering what your obligations are, check with your lawyer. But on the buyer side, most of my buyers want to know. Now, how they choose to react to knowing that detail, that's a personal decision. Some people are okay with that information, and some buyers, like, no way, we're never going to buy that house. Well, the duty of care when you're representing the buyer is to ask the questions to satisfy that that home is suitable for your buyer clients. It's to do the research. It's to go online and check. It's to speak to the neighbors, do whatever you got to do. Because I can tell you for sure, the minute your clients are living in their new home and they develop any kind of few words relationship with their neighbors, they're going to know everything that has happened to that home before they moved in. If the kids in that home were rowdy and threw wild parties at night, the neighbors are going to say, oh, thank God you guys are here. Those kids next door that used to live there made so much noise. And if the neighbors are talking that, for sure they're going to say, it's a shame what happened to the neighbor with that, violent crime that was committed there, or she was so nice, it's too bad what happened to her. And you're going to find out everything. So if you're representing the buyer, you have a duty of care to your clients to find out whatever you can about the home. In any offer I put together, there's a clause that says seller promises that this home has not been the scene of any violent crime, death, homicide, things of that nature. And every time I read that to my buyer clients, they're always surprised. Like, why is that there? Don't the sellers need to tell us this? Again, the answer is no. There is no obligation, no rule forcing the seller to disclose that kind of information. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. And if you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, it's really simple. Up here, there's a link. Below in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Now, let's get into the numbers. Folks, the market, the direction, really difficult to explain right now. Let me show you. Let's get right into things here. So here's a quick summary. We've got detached, semis and towns, condos. Now for this show, we're talking about the city of Toronto only, and we're only going to deal with detached, semis and towns, the freehold market. I did put condos here for reference, but detached has been kind of 2 weeks in a row now dropping in price. Semis and towns, it's really not much has happened over the last, say, 4 weeks. Let's get started with detached. 142 detached properties were sold. 32 of those were at $2 million or more. Now, 142 is lower than the previous week. So sales were increasing, but once we kind of jumped up, not really increasing by that much every single week. And last week, for week ending March 20th, sales came down. Now, it's 1 week. It can go up again next week, or it can continue to go down. We don't know which way it's going to go, but I would have expected sales to continue to increase. However, average sold price, way down. We're now at $1,605,000. Now, a lot of you, including myself, will say an average price of $1.6 million, that's still a lot of money. Of course it is. It's a ton of money, especially as an average price. But when I say it's way down, it's not about the number. It's about in relation to where we were before. And if we look at this year so far, 2024, 1605 is one of the lowest weeks we've had so far as average sold prices go. Most of this year so far has had an average sold price higher than 1.6 mil. 1,605,000 is 4% higher than where we were this time a year ago. The median price is 3% higher. And if we're trying to spot a trend, we'll look at the dotted line, which is a 4-week moving average. And for a while, since the beginning of the year, both median and average price were trending up. The dotted line still kind of shows that it's trending up past the beginning of March. However, it is a 4-week moving average, so it is taking the high numbers with the low numbers, averaging them out. But when we look at the direct numbers, we can see they're much lower. So is the dotted line starting to make its turn down now? That's what we don't know. And the whole point of this is trying to spot a trend. Let's see. 142 were sold, 59% sold at list price or more. To me, 59%, almost 60%, and that's kind of where we've been, 61 to 57% over the last 4 weeks. That's a high percentage. It's not super high. We've seen it at 70 and 80 and 90% in the past, not so distant past, but 60%, that's quite an active market. It's by no means a buyer's market where, prices are bottoming out. 60%, 59% selling at list price or more is a fairly active, competitive market. Listings, 368 were listed. That's a big week relative to what we've seen so far this year in listings. This year and compared to last year at this time, it's one of the highest jumps from 1 week to the next when it comes to listings. So 368 were listed. Active listings is much higher than what we've seen this year so far. Months of inventory, well, think about it. Sales are down, active listings are up. We've got more inventory to choose from. So months of inventory went from 1.5 to 1.9 months of inventory. As months of inventory go up, prices tend to come down. Now, there's fluctuations on a weekly basis, the way we're charting it here, so we'll have to see which way this goes. But that's the whole city of Toronto as one big market, and that's not reality. It's not what you're going to experience when you're out there. Toronto really has a whole bunch of different micro markets out there, and I've broken Toronto down into 9 sections. Within these sections, there's other markets within these sections also, but let's look at it. So all Toronto, 1.9 months of inventory. Scarborough, one of the most competitive parts of the city, 1 month of inventory. That's what it was also the previous week. So 1 month of inventory is about half of the whole city's average. 48 properties were sold, 1 month of inventory. 67% of those properties selling at list price or more. Scarborough, you could expect most of the listings coming out with an offer date. So if you want to buy in Scarborough, you can expect to be competing with other buyers. Let's look at some of the other neighborhoods. Well, when you start to look around, 2 months of inventory, Etobicoke 1.7, High Park 2.5, York Mills, Rosedale 3.1, 2.6. There's not a huge deviation from the 1.9. So some will go up to, say, 3 months of inventory, 3.1. They'll go down to as low as 1 month of inventory. So different experiences depending on which part of the city you're transacting in. That's for the detached market. Let's look at semis. 46 semis were sold. 11 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Now, sales were increasing, but for 3 weeks in a row or 2 weeks in a row, sales have come down now. Average price, $1,322,000. Average price has actually gone up quite a bit versus the previous week. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the trend here for semis? Is it trending up? Well, if I take the first few weeks kind of out of the equation because it's so close to the new year, and it kind of looks kind of flat, although there's lots of fluctuations week to week. It kind of looks a bit flat. But when we look at the median price is 3% higher than where we were this time a year ago. The average price is 7%. The dotted line from the beginning of the year, it's trending up, the 4-week moving average. But over the last 4 weeks or so, it's kind of flat or trending down a little bit, even when we're looking at semis. And months of inventory starting to climb. We were at 0.7. We're now at 1.2. So it's not a big change, but it's a change trending upwards. 72% of the semis sold at list price or more. Townhouses. Now, these are freehold townhouses. We went from selling in the 20s last week, March 20th. 9 townhouses were sold. 2 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Average sold price down from the previous week to $1,165,000. Now, townhouses, really, over the span of this year, prices have been increasing or trending upwards. Average price is 7% lower than where we were this time a year ago. The median price is 8% higher this time year over year. Months of inventory, well, think about it. Sales went from where they were in the 20s down to 9. More listings came up. Months of inventory, based on only 9 sales every week, jumped from 1.2 to 3 months of inventory. But 89% of the townhouse sold, and there wasn't that much, it was just 9, 89% sold at list price or more. Here's a summary of months of inventory. Now, condos are here just for reference only. Condos, very much in a balanced market. We'll be talking about condos in tomorrow's show, all condos for the GTA. But townhouses, pretty much in a balanced market. The detached and semis, more in a seller's market. I don't think you're going to experience a buyer's market just about anywhere in the city, but it'll be balanced. Most likely though, more of a seller's type of market. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.